Welcome to Beautiful Thrift Homemaking. I'm Linda. I'm reading through a vintage cookbook from 1917. It's called A Thousand Ways to Please a Husband. I have a reprint here from Dover Publications. We're going to be reading chapters 125 through 130 and finishing up the month of March. And I'm going to share just a couple of the recipes from these chapters with you. Chapter 125, Bettina entertains a small neighbor. Indeed, I will keep Kathleen for you, said Bettina to Mrs. Fulton. I'll enjoy it. We'll have to invent some new ways. We'll have to invent some new plays and have such a jolly time that she won't miss her mother at all. You're sure you don't mind? Asked Mrs. Fulton anxiously. If Mother were only stronger, I would leave her there. Go right on, Mrs. Fulton, and don't worry one bit. Kathleen and I are going to have the time of our lives. Let's see, it's nearly 3. Shall I feed her anything? Well, she had an early lunch and has just wakened from her nap. Perhaps she is a little hungry. Are you? Bandelli, replied Kathleen with emphasis. Oh, I know something that's better for little girls than bread and jelly, said Bettina, lifting the roly-poly little mite onto the kitchen table. I'll make her some good cream toast. May I, Mrs. Fulton? Indeed, you may if you will, said Mrs. Fulton. I'm afraid she won't always eat it, though. Well, I'll have to go, I suppose, if I get to Sister Annie's train on time. Then we'll do a little shopping downtown, and I'll be back for Kathleen at 6 o'clock sharp. Just whenever it's convenient for you, Mrs. Fulton. Goodbye. Goodbye, echoed Kathleen, apparently without the least regret. When Kathleen was established with her cream toast at the kitchen table, Bettina said, Now, when you're all through eating, you and Aunt Bettina will make a beautiful graham cracker cake for Uncle Bob. But first we'll clean some white gloves, shall we? Kathleen nodded solemnly, her mouth full of du trim coche. Well, watch me then, honey lamb. See, I'll put these dirty old gloves in this nice mason jar of clean gasoline and let them soak a while. Then once in a while I'll shake 'em up like this. Then by and by I'll rinse 'em in nice new gasoline, and they'll be just as white as new. Did you know that, Kathleen? Yes, said Kathleen, staring wisely. Oh, you little owl! You knew more than Aunt Bettina then. At least than I knew yet till yesterday, for I always thought it necessary to rub white gloves to get them clean. See? This way I'll drop them down in the gasoline and won't need to soil my hands at all. I'll get them out with a clean little stick or a long fork. There. Now, are we all ready to make the cake? And here we have Bettina's recipes for the cream toast and the graham cracker cake with white icing. All right, can't wait to discuss that chapter. But we're going to listen to all the chapters first. A Sunday Night Tea, chapter 126. Stir this chicken a la king a moment for me, will you, Ruth? Said Bettina. I'll warm the plates in the oven. What is that brown paper for? To put under the dishes I'm warming. It breaks the heat and prevents cracking. There, that cream sauce has cooked enough now. I'll take it and beat it for a minute. See? There now, it's ready for the egg and the chicken mixture. Shall I stir it now? Don't you put it back over the fire? Just for a minute. You see, if any custard or egg sauce is allowed to cook more than a minute after the egg has been added, it will curdle. Oh, is it done now? Let me toast the bread for it, will you, Bettina? I like to make cunning little light brown triangles. I hope I have made enough of this chicken a la king. For 8 people? I'm sure that you have, Bettina. Even for people with as good appetites as Fred and I have. Are you ready to serve it now? That Sunday evening, Bettina served chicken a la king, toast, cakes with Bettina icing, and coffee. And she shares the recipes for her chicken a la king and some small cakes and some icing to go on those cakes. Chapter 127, A Shamrock Luncheon. Bettina was entertaining the crowd at a shamrock luncheon, and each guest, to show her enthusiasm for the charms of Old Ireland, was wearing was wearing somewhere upon her gown a bit of green. A green basket filled with white carnations and green foliage stood in the center of the table. White glass candlesticks with green shades also carried out the color scheme, while white crocheted favor baskets filled with dainty green candies were at each plate. The table was set for 6. The name cards were white shamrocks outlined with green ink and edged with gilt. And the name and the name on each was written in green. Bettina used green ferns for decoration in every possible place where they might add to the attractiveness of the table. Under the glass dishes and around the baskets containing rolls, cakes, and croutons. "You might be Irish yourself, Bettina," said Mary. "You have such a feeling for green. And isn't the table lovely, girls?" For luncheon, Bettina served grapefruit cocktail, cream of celery soup, shamrock croutons, Bettina meat timbales, brown sauce, asparagus on toast, mashed sweet potato croquettes, shamrock rolls, mint jelly, pepper salad, sandwiches, bombe glacée, shamrock cakes, coffee, and shamrock candies. And her recipes include those for grapefruit cocktail, cream of celery soup, and the shamrock croutons. All right, chapter 128, At Dinner. "Mary gave a waffle party today," announced Bettina at the dinner table. "A waffle party in the afternoon," said Bob. "That was queer. Usually at afternoon parties you women serve tiny little cups of tea and dainty olive sandwiches almost too small to be visible, don't you? Waffles are more sensible, I think, but it seems a shame that we men had to miss such a party." "Well, I'm afraid I'll have to acknowledge that we had a very good time without you," laughed Bettina wickedly. "It has been cold today, you know, and Mary's kitchen was so warm and bright and cozy. We all went out there and took turns baking the waffles. We consumed a large number of them and had a very jolly, informal kind of time. We housekeepers compared notes and gave each other advice and really learned a great many things." "Such as?" "Well, Alice tells me that when she makes a devil's food cake, she removes all of the melted chocolate from the pan by adding a little flour, which mixes in thoroughly and saves any waste of chocolate. Surely that is worth knowing." "It certainly is, though I'll admit that I don't quite understand your language." "Well, cheer up, Bob. There are times when I confess that I don't quite understand the automobile explanations you so often give me of late." Their dinner that evening consisted of pork chops, mashed potatoes, creamed carrots, Bettina salad, orange dessert, and coffee. And we have her recipes for the pork chops, Bettina salad, and orange dessert. Chapter 129, An Anniversary Dinner. "This is some dinner, Bettina," said Bob over his dessert. "It's like a celebration somehow, with the pink candles on the table and the flowers and the company menu. Why, Bettina, I do believe it is an anniversary." "Isn't it? Let me see. The 2nd anniversary of our engagement." "I've been waiting to see if you would remember that, Bob, and I must say that I'm a little ashamed of you. After all, it took the pink candles and the company dinner to make you think of it. Well, I suppose men are all alike." And she sighed the sigh of deep disillusionment. Bob waited for a moment to see the dimple reappear in her cheek and the twinkle in her eyes, and then he, too, sighed a sigh of relief. "Bless your heart, Bettina, don't you sigh like that again. You almost had me thinking that you were in earnest. Now you took the very nicest way to remind me of that anniversary. Instead of feeling neglected like some women. What do you mean about some women, Bob? Only what I've read in books. Well, the books don't know, but I give you fair warning, Bob, that on the next anniversary you fail to remember, I'll feed you bread and milk and not chicken. This is a fine dessert, said Bob meekly and tactfully. Do you like it? I enjoy making it. It looks so light and fluffy. I pile it very lightly into the glass dish to make it that way. I prefer gelatin in glass dishes, don't you, Bob? You bet I do. Everything about this anniversary dinner is fine, except for my own stupidity. That night, Bettina served Bettina's chicken en casserole, whole wheat bread, butter, cranberry jelly, head lettuce with salad dressing, Bettina's sponge, and coffee. And we have her recipes for her chicken in casserole and her sponge. In the last chapter for this episode of ours, we're going to do 130. Ruth comes to dinner. How do you like this kind of meat, Ruth? Asked Bob. It is a little invention of Bettina's own. I call it a symphony, and no mistake. It is an economy, not a symphony, said Bettina. But if it leads you to make such dreadful puns as that, I'll wish I had fed you something else for dinner. To me, said Ruth, this dish is a delicacy and a despair. How can you think of things like this? I know I never could do it in the whole wide world. I can't compose symphonies or poems, said Bettina, so I express myself in this way, and most of my music is played in a simple key. It is difficult to think of a variety of inexpensive meat dishes, and sometimes I have to invent them in order to keep within my allowance and still vary my menus. Creamed onions are economical and healthful, too, so you see that my whole dinner is inexpensive. And also delicious, said Ruth. I don't see how you manage to keep cooked onions from having a strong smell and to keep the house so free from the odor. Oh, that someone would patent and sell an onion with an onion taste and with a violet smell, quoted Bob. Well, said Bettina, I'm afraid that a house in which onions have recently been cooking can't be entirely free from the odor, but I largely overcome the difficulty by peeling them under cold water and then cooking them in an uncovered vessel. Then, too, I wonder if you know that boiling them for 5 minutes and then draining them and covering them with boiling water again, even draining them twice and finishing the cooking in fresh boiling water, it is a splendid thing for taking away the strong taste. No, I didn't know that. Bettina, dear, your kind of applesauce is as fine a dessert as I ever ate. You're good to say so, Ruth. I was afraid when I urged you to stay tonight that you might think this meal very plain and simple for a guest. But I know it is healthful and economical, and Bob seems to thrive, so I'll not be remorseful. Just let me ask you what gives this applesauce such a delicate flavor. It isn't a bit like common ordinary applesauce. I don't know. Maybe it's the butter. I always put that in, and a few grains of salt. This has also a thin slice of lemon cooked in it, rind and all. And of course there is a little cinnamon, though some people prefer nutmeg. Then I try to be careful in putting in the sugar, for I know that some apples require more than others. These were tart apples. I like them better for applesauce. The reason why I'm never cross is 'cause I'm fed on applesauce, remarked Bob complacently. But I am sure you'd fret and cry if fed instead on apple pie, added Ruth. Not Bettina's apple pie, said Bob decidedly. You may just be sure that it would improve any disposition. Dinner that night consisted of Bettina steak, new potatoes with maitre d' hotel sauce, creamed onions, apple sauce, bread, and butter. And we have the recipes for Bettina steak, creamed onions, and applesauce. And that will finish the month of March. So let's go back to chapter 125 very quickly and see. Bettina entertains a small neighbor. I couldn't help laughing when I was reading that. I can't believe that she was babysitting a little girl and decided to clean white gloves in a jar of gasoline and show the little girl about that process. Okay, that was rather humorous. But what I really did think was charming was she called the little girl Honey Lamb and Little Owl. And so that was sweet. And then the graham cracker cake, I noticed, has no flour in it, but instead it uses graham cracker crumbs. And I thought that was interesting. There was another recipe in this book in chapter 6 for some little chocolate cakes that I actually tried out because instead of having flour, they were made with breadcrumbs. And I wanted to test that out. So if you're interested and didn't see that, that's in my chapter 6. And then in a Sunday night tea in chapter 126, we have a light supper, or in other words, a tea. So it was a very light meal with just some creamed chicken on toast and some cakes and coffee. And then chapter 127, a shamrock luncheon, is the St. Patrick's Day luncheon, and in this one she uses a green and white decor. She did use colors for some parties in the past. One time we had a rainbow, a pastel rainbow colors, and I think a pink and white. Those might have been for some of the bridal showers and such. And then we had the 4th of July and another patriotic holiday also with a red, white, and blue theme. So I don't know when the last time was that you took the time to have a color theme in your get-togethers or parties. But when I was growing up, that was quite popular to do things like that. And I'm not sure that I've done anything like that anytime recently. But it's something to think about, and it is so lovely, and it shows such care and thoughtfulness. I do want to share one of the recipes from this chapter, which is the cream of celery soup. I noticed you can sometimes get a bag of celery pretty inexpensively, so this would be a very cost-effective recipe and probably very tasty. So you're going to take 2/3 a cup of celery cut fine, 1.5 cups of water, 4 tablespoons of butter, and 6 tablespoons of flour, 2.5 cups milk, 2 teaspoons of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of paprika, 1 teaspoon of chopped parsley, and 2 tablespoons of whipped cream or heavy whipping cream. Wash the celery thoroughly and cut into small pieces. Add the small leaves and the water. Simmer for 35 minutes. Strain through a coarse strainer, rubbing all of the pulp through. Melt the butter, add the flour, salt, and paprika, add the milk, and cook 2 minutes, stirring to prevent scorching. So here you're doing that process of making a white sauce. Then you're going to add the celery stalk and the pulp. Cook 1 minute. Fill bouillon cups 3/4 full. Add 2 pinches of parsley and 1 teaspoon of cream to each serving. So that would be your cream of celery soup. It's probably not very, very green, but it was kind of fun that she served it with shamrock croutons. And by the way, that was for 6 portions of soup, 1917 era portions. The croutons are just slices of bread that have been toasted with butter on them, and they are cut with cookie cutter that is shaped like a shamrock. And that is served with the soup. So that's pretty fun. All right, then chapter 128 was at dinner, And that's the anniversary. We're in the, no, actually 128, sorry. 128 was Bettina telling Bob about how the girls got together and had a waffle party and just shared some information about cooking tips and such, homemaking tips, while they were visiting and making waffles. So they took turns using the waffle iron. And so that was fun. And she said it was nice and warm and cozy on a cold day. I think that sounds really fun, actually. A waffle party. Just stay in the kitchen and... All right. The next chapter was the anniversary dinner. 2 years since since they got engaged, and now of course they've been married since June. And Bettina made a very special meal for Bob to remind him of that engagement. And now we have our final chapter. Ruth comes to dinner, and she seems to be by herself. Her fiance is not with her, and she's going to eat with them, and it's a modest meal that was also economical, especially the creamed onions. And I'd like to say that sometimes you can save money by buying in bulk, and onions are one of those things. If you go to one of those restaurant supply stores, you can get the very large bags of onions for only a couple dollars, and you wonder, what in the world am I going to do with all these onions? They're going to go bad before I use them up. My husband often had suggested that I go in with some friends and split the bags up. I don't think I ever really organized that, but it's a good idea. And so this would be a good recipe, this creamed onions, to use with a large number of onions, because it's going to take 6 onions. And what you do to make 4 portions of creamed onions is you peel 6 medium-sized onions under cold water, place in a stew pan and cover with boiling water, boil 5 minutes, drain, cover again with boiling water and cook 10 minutes, drain, recover with boiling water and cook 10 minutes longer or until tender. Serve with hot white sauce. So I'll tell you about the white sauce in a second, but I was just going to comment that I think how I would do this is I would have my electric kettle filled with water and bringing water to a boil while I was boiling those onions on the stove, and each time I drained it, I would add in then that freshly boiled water so I'd have it ready. I think that's how I would do that. Now it says serve with hot white sauce, and it asked for 1.5 cups of vegetable white sauce. So I looked back in the book and I saw that the white sauces were in chapter 20. So if you ever have an interest in and missed the chapter that I covered the white sauces in, you want to go back to chapter 20 in my videos and hear all about these white sauces, because she covered several. So she says for the creamed onions to use 1.5 cups of the vegetable white sauce. And I'll tell you how to make that. 2 tablespoons butter, 3 tablespoons flour, 1 cup milk, 3/4 teaspoon salt. This white sauce is used for creamed vegetables, creamed fish, etc. This amount is required for 2 cups of vegetables. All right. So what you do to make these sauces is you melt the butter in a saucepan and add the flour and salt, stirring constantly. When well mixed, add the liquid a little at a time. Bring to a boil, stirring constantly. This is far better than mixing the flour with a little of the liquid when cold, as so many people do when creaming potatoes or other things. If the white sauce seems too thick for the purpose, then with a little more liquid before removing from the fire. Okay. And another comment she made in that chapter, chapter 20, is about the cream sauces. There are really 4 kinds of white sauces, and they are very simple to make. I think everyone should know the right way to make them, for they are useful in preparing so many good things. Okay, so What do you think about trying creamed onions? I've never had that, but I am tempted to try that. And then she also served applesauce, and I was going to share that with you and talk a little bit about that. So for this applesauce, she used 6 tart apples, 1/2 a cup of water, 1/2 a cup sugar, 1 thin slice of lemon, 1/8 teaspoon cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon butter, a few grains of salt. Wash, peel, quarter, and core the apples. Add the water, cover the kettle with a lid, and cook till apples are soft. Add other ingredients. Cook enough longer to dissolve the sugar. Mash or put through a colander if desired. All right, so now I'm going to close up the book and look at my notes because I just wanted to tell you a little bit more about apples. I looked over the book so far, and if you have access to large bags of apples inexpensively, you might consider making applesauce. Homemade applesauce is so delicious, and it can be served as a side dish. It accompanies meat such as pork so very well, and even chicken, and then it also makes a nice dessert. So in our book, we have an applesauce recipe in chapter 130, like I just read from, but also in chapter 95 and in chapter 48. And then we also have an applesauce cake that takes a cup of applesauce, and that's in chapter 21. And then we have a Dutch apple cake in chapter 31. We have something called Brown Betty in chapters 42 and 90. We have something called Bettina's Apples, which is a baked apple, in chapter 47 and chapter 60. She served glazed apples in chapter 33, apple tapioca in chapter 64 and chapter 94, apple dumpling in chapter 68 and chapter 75. And the baked apples, chapter 85 and chapter 30 and chapter 119 and chapter 123. So that is a lot of apple recipes and slight variations in each of those from one to the other. Sometimes it's a different portion that it makes. Sometimes she's making it for 2 people, sometimes for 4, and so forth. And other times there's just a slight difference in the ingredients. And so if you've missed any of those and are interested in doing any of the apple desserts, if you have access to apples, you might want to consider trying expanding your repertoire and trying some of these. Well, this has been a long video that's just finishing up the month of March. So thank you for hanging in there with me, and hopefully you enjoyed a little of this and that you'll join me again for other episodes. Thank you. Bye-bye.